Good evening, everyone. You're watching Vintage Motocross Q&A, and I'm your host, Joe Abadi. Fresh in from watching that Supercross race, congratulations to Cooper Webb. We're going all the way to Sunday to see who the Supercross champ is going to be. As always, I want to thank Jordan Woodwork for putting this program together for us every Wednesday. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, this will be the last Wednesday that we're on at 7 o'clock. We've been doing that not to conflict with Supercross. Next Wednesday, we'll be back at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the same way we were in the weeks gone by. On tonight's show, Jordan, let's get a look at the starting line. We've got some wonderful things coming up for you. In the next time, try this segment. We're going to be talking about replacing wheel bearings. And Moto Showcase, Joe Anderson sent in a beautiful Kawasaki KX 125. In the What's It Worth segment, we'll be taking a look at a 1974 Honda. And of course, we have your questions that you sent in. We're going to be talking about how to flush out a brake line, and a whole lot more stuff coming up on the show. Product Spotlight, too. We got a Preston Petty special lined up for you. You're really going to like that. And it includes a jersey this week, too. Trivia contest is going to be great tonight. You're not going to want to miss it. The question's going to be a little bit difficult. It's a three-part question, but the prize tonight is going to be a brand new 1972 Honda RC 125 DVD. Stick around. We'll tell you what the question is a little bit later. You can call in. You get a chance to win this great DVD. Don't forget to share it. Right now, if you can look down at your phone or if you're on your computer, please share the program with your friends. Have them come down and join us. They can watch the show with us here and get involved with trivia and learn a whole bunch more stuff as we go on with the show. I also want to mention that the YouTube channel is going pretty well. We're up over 300 subscribers now. And remember, when I tell you to subscribe to the YouTube channel, it doesn't cost anything. It's a free subscription. So if you can go over there after the show, subscribe to Vintage Motocross Q&A, it'd be a big help. As it builds, we'll be able to bring you a live show right from YouTube. You'll be able to see it on the big screen TV. Also, all of our shows that we've recorded here at Vintage Motocross Q&A on Wednesdays are available at any time on YouTube in HD. I want to thank our sponsors, AMSOIL, the first in synthetic oil since 1973, Preston Petty Products, our good friend Paul Stannard there. Of course, Metro Racing, FastGuyStuff.com, and Vmxq&A. On tonight's Next Time Try This segment, I'm going to discuss with you a little bit about how to remove wheel bearings. It really isn't that difficult. With a couple of tips I'm going to give you, it's going to make it even easier. Something I want to bring to your attention before we begin, though. As the bearings sit on each side of the hub, there's a spacer that sits between them, just like this. It sits right in there between the two bearings. The axle rides on it. It helps keep the grease in and keep the dirt out. But you have to get this little bushing out of the way first before you have access to the bearing. How you do that is with a bolt like this. So that's what I like to use. Something with a blunt end on it. I'm going to show you how to get it down in there and how to pop that bearing out quite easily. It doesn't really matter which side you begin from. I prefer to keep the brake side down. You can see the bearing is flush right here. If you were to have this thing sitting flat on your workbench, there wouldn't be any room for the bearing to fall out. So I put a couple of pieces of wood like this. The thing you want to do is get that bolt that we talked about a little bit earlier and make sure, give it a little, put it about halfway down to where that sleeve is, where that bushing is. And you just give it a little tap like that, and it'll go to the side. Then you can feel that it's actually hitting the edge of the bearing. Give it a couple of taps. And as you can see, that bearing falls right out of there. And that's how easy it is to get the bearings out. Now I want to discuss a few other tips here with you before we finish up. If you're going to be bead blasting your hubs, take the bearings out, do your bead blasting, get them all nice and clean. Or if you're going to strip them, however you're going to refinish them. Before you paint them, I would recommend you put new bearings in. Yes, before you paint, put the new bearings in. I do it that way, and then I mask them off carefully, and then I paint the hub. I do that in order to avoid any nicks or scratches on the hub after I've painted it. So, get everything out, get it all cleaned up. You can bead blast it, press your new bearings in, mask it, then you can go about your painting and refinishing your hub. That's my tip this week. For next time, try this. Jordan, great job of editing the video. I hope everyone got some useful information out of that. When I mentioned in the video about pressing in your bearings before you refinish it, obviously I'm not speaking of if you're going to powder coat your hubs. Now, I'm not a big advocate of powder coating hubs, but just keep that in mind that if you are going to powder coat them, don't put the bearings in before you do that. However, do tell your powder coater to make sure he mats off the inside where that bearing is going to sit on that surface. You can get them back in nice and easy. And that's my tip this week on how to install or take out bearings in a hub. Jordan, what do we got next? In the Moto Showcase, a 1979 KX125 that was sent in to us by a longtime viewer, Joe Anderson. I really like this bike. He did a beautiful job, and it took him quite some time to complete this bike. I'm going to read to you some of the things that Joe had accomplished on this bike while Jordan goes through some of the slides. All of the hardware on the bike is original, all the screws, everything was refinished. The tires are Bridgestone M22s and 23s, they're NOS. The rims were special ordered from Taiwan in gold anodized. The spokes and nipples are from Buchanan. The plastic and decals, of course, from the best in the business, Nightmare Racing. It's got green Hourly grips. The frame was powder coated at an 80% gloss, which I'm a big fan of. Shocks are perfect, low hour original units. They still had a good gas charge. The seat was ordered from Taiwan. Joe was able to purchase NOS cables from Italy. The engine was totally rebuilt using an NOS cylinder, piston, rod kit, clutch plates, and everything else that goes in there. The gas tank was polished. It's got an NOS cap. There's an NOS sprocket from Thailand. The hubs have been repainted with new bearings, new brake shoes, did chain NOS sprockets. The fork legs were vapor blasted and rebuilt. The carburetor was rebuilt. It's got a new uni filter, the original bars, NOS levers and covers, and it's got a reproduction display stand on it. The collecting of the parts took Joe several years to complete. The only thing he was really missing on the bike, which were the lower guards to the lower fork legs, and those are just about the hardest thing to find of all parts in vintage motocross. I want to thank Joe Anderson for sending us in this beautiful 79 KX125. For doing that, Joe will receive a nice sticker pack from fastguystuff.com. Joe, get me your address, and I'll get those stickers out to you immediately. Thanks once again for being a contributor to Vintage Motocross Q&A and sending us in this great-looking Kawasaki KX125. In the Here's the Problem segment tonight, Jordan, what do we got up first? Sal Scarpa, what's the best thing to use when flushing out a hydraulic brake system on a motorcycle? I do get occasionally a bike in here new enough that has hydraulic brakes on it, mostly in the front, not too often in the rear. What I have found out, what works the best for flushing out that old fluid is denatured alcohol. You can get a kit like this with a pump. It'll pump it all out. It'll get it out of the brake caliper, of course, on the bottom, and get your line cleared out. You also want to get, of course, anything out of the master cylinder. The problem with a lot of times is that water gets involved, or somehow water gets in there when you're washing a bike, and the water doesn't have a boiling point as high as the brake fluid itself. So you wind up with a spongy feel, and the water gets trapped in there, much like water gets trapped in oil, where it just sits on top of it, and you want to get it flushed out. So that's what you want to use, denatured alcohol, and my recommendation would be to replace it with AMSOIL brake fluid. Now, I would use a .4, not a .5. A .5 has silicone in it. It's made more for a modern master cylinder and brake caliper. Use .4. The boiling point in that is perfect for a vintage motocross bike, and that's what you want to use from our sponsor, AMSOIL. Sal Scarpa, thanks for sending in the question. Dale Carmine, what would you suggest paint or powder coat on a rebuild? Which would you choose for a race bike or a show bike? Does it reflect the value if I were to go sell this bike? This is becoming an age-old question, much like what should I mix my oil and gas at, or how much fork oil does my motorcycle take? Look, I look at it this way. Paint to show, powder coat to go. Bikes didn't come with powder coating when they were new. You're saying you're doing a rebuild here, Carmine. So what I would say is that you should powder coat the bike if you're going to go out and race it. It's not really going to hurt the price, because when you go to sell the bike, you're going to be selling it as a race bike anyway. So if it's powder coated, it's powder coated. It's going to last a little bit longer. It's going to look a little bit better. Some people will disagree. You'll hear a couple of different opinions on whether you should powder coat or not. I'm a big fan of it on race bikes. I've never had a problem with it. If it's going to be a show bike, you paint it. Race bike, you can powder coat it. It's not going to affect the price when you go to sell it. Thanks for sending in the question. Rob Margella on a 1974 Yamaha TY250. How can I check for leaky crank seals? Well, you're lucky on a TY250 because number one, they go in without splitting the cases. You can put them, take the primary off, take the primary gear and the clutch off. You can press it in on that side. You could also pull the other one out and press the one in on the ignition side. How can you find out if it's leaking? On the ignition side, like you see here in the picture, you're going to see premix spitting out of there if it's really leaking. And in there, you're going to see a mixture of oil, gas, probably some dirt, and you're going to know right away if they're leaking on that side. The primary side, you usually don't have a problem with it leaking too often because it's usually bathed in oil and the seal doesn't go bad that often. Now, we are talking about a TY250 here, and being the seals do press in from the outside, I would recommend just changing them, Rob. The bike is, 45 years old. Just change them and get it done and over with. You didn't tell me really what the symptoms were or what you were experiencing to make you think it did need crank seals. But at this point, if you think it does and you're seeing any of those indications, I would change them. Also, while you're there, there's a good possibility that you've got too much run out in the crank from the main bearing. So a case splitting may be in your future. So you just putting in new seals may not solve your problem. If the crank bearings are loose, then you're going to have to change those and get the situation resolved anyway. But the good news is, if they aren't too bad, you could just change the seals in a TY250 without splitting the cases. Rob, I want to thank you for sending in that question. I got to take a break here before I talk about this bike. Just a sip. Okay. BringYourTrailer.com. It's an auction site. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but this week we saw a 1974 Honda CR250 that sold with a buyer premium of $5,250. Now, even till this minute while I'm sitting here, the jury isn't still out on this bike, and as Jordan goes through these slides, I'll tell you why. It appeared to be a nice bike, but I really wasn't too thrilled with the description from the seller, mostly because all it seemed was it was regurgitated information that was typed up somewhere else. Now, the bike did have a painted gas tank on it, but it had an aluminum tank. Anytime I see a painted gas tank on a 74 or 75 Elsinore, I would bet my bottom dollar that there's body work underneath there. So at $5,250, I'm a little concerned that there's paint work or body work underneath the paint. The Kickstarter was wrong on the bike. All the hardware was not replated. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. Somebody took some liberties by making some aluminum engine plates, which isn't really correct. The ignition cover is wrong on the bike. It appears to be from an MT from 1974 or 75. The rims, while they look nice, they were polished to a nice high shine, but they should have been anodized silver. The spokes were replaced. I could tell from the pictures, you won't be able to tell from here, but the frame was powder coated, the hubs were powder coated, the shocks are incorrect on the back, the color is off on the green, and the handlebars were incorrect on the bike. At $5,250, I don't know where I am with this bike. I don't know if I'm going to buy a race bike or if I'm going to buy a $5,200 bike that I want to make a showpiece, and it basically has to come apart because all the hardware has to be done. The wheels have to be done again, and there's a couple of other things, including the gas tank, which can get a little pricey to restore. So at $5,250, I'm thinking I could find a race bike with a little more wear and tear on it if I was looking for a racer. And if I was going to buy this bike to race, I still think it's a $1,500 at least away from being a race bike. Why? It needs shocks, number one, that's $500. If that pipe looks as good in person as it does in the pictures, you're not going to want to race with that pipe. It's a very valuable item. You're going to have to get that off there and probably go for another $450 on a pipe to race with it. So it isn't a show bike. It's not ready to be a race bike. I really, at this point, can't make up my mind of whether that $5,250 is a good price or not. What would push me over the fence if I got there and found out that the bike ran flawlessly, shifted flawlessly, that there was really nothing wrong mechanically with the bike? Then I'd feel a whole lot better about $5,250. But from where I'm sitting with the brief description that I don't feel was very, very accurate at all, I'm not feeling too warm and fuzzy at $5,250 on this bike. And that's just how I see it on this one. Trivia, it's coming up right now. It's a three-part question, and this is a whole lot harder than the one we had last week about Kenny Roberts, okay? So you guys said that one was easy. Well, I'm going to give you something a little more difficult this week. It will be for this DVD for this 1972 RC 125M. It's a great little bike. It's got a lot of information in here, some incredible pictures. So you're really going to have to put on your thinking cap about this one. It's a three-part question, Jordan. Let's put the question up on the screen. I would like to know who the rider was who rode this bike. I think you guys can handle that one. What I'd also like to know is, what was this tank modified for? What race was it modified for? I'll take the country or I'll take the track. And also, I want to know who helped make this modification on this tank. If you know whose bike it was, you might know about who helped him modify that tank in the last minute right before this race. So, who was the guy who rode that bike? Why was that tank modified? What race was it modified for? And who was the man who helped modify that tank with the rider who rode that bike that day? Three-part question. It's a little tough, but I think you guys should get it. Call in 925-234-8181. Susie will take your call. That's 925-234-8181. Three-part question. Win this great DVD about the 72 RC 125. In the product spotlight tonight, we have something from Preston Petty once again. I want to thank Preston Petty for making us an authorized dealer. You can always go right over there to the Preston Petty website and order whatever you like. Tonight, we have a special on a front and rear fender package and also a jersey. You can save $20 on this. How you do this is you go over to the Preston Petty website and you're going to see a little red tab that says Vmxq&A special. Hit that tab, order what size jersey you want, and when you check out, you'll get the $20 discount. Don't go buying other things on there, then trying to check out and get the discount. You can only go to the Vmxq&A tab, get the special, get $20 off, and you'll get that delivered to you. I want to thank Preston Petty, Full Standard, for all their support for the show. We're having a really great time selling your products, and I hope you're seeing some action from our show on your website. Jordan, what do we got up next? Vmxq commercial? Vmxq, keep the ride going.
Classic and vintage dirt bikes are more than a hobby. It's not just about the ride. It's about the work that goes in. The work that keeps you connected to the ride. It's about bringing the bike back to life and doing it with your own hands. It's about the adrenaline and adventure. And when it comes to putting all the pieces together, only Vmxq knows the bikes and parts the way you do. Vmxq, keep the ride going.
Vmxq, keep the ride going. Susie informs me that we still do not have a winner in the trivia contest. So we're going to keep going here for just a couple of minutes more. I have some announcements to make. We'll wait and be patient and see if we can get a winner tonight for this great DVD, 72 Honda RC 125M. And remember, it's whose bike was it? Why was the tank modified? For what race? And who was the person who helped him modify that tank? I'll even take 2 out of 3. If you could give me 2 out of 3, and the first one you guys should have with no problem. The second one's tough, so is the third. Jordan, let's go to the announcements, and we'll see if Susie doesn't get a winner for us before long. Vmxq&A radio is going great. It's happening on Sundays. I've been doing it at 11 o'clock in the morning. I've been doing it at that time also not to interfere with Supercross on Sunday. I don't know if I'm going to change the time back to 4 p.m. in the afternoon or not, but right now it's at 11 o'clock. This past Sunday, we had Chuck's son as our guest. He was on for just about an hour, or a little bit more. He had some fabulous stories to tell, and Jordan's put together a little tape reel right here where we can listen to some of the things that Chuck was telling us about. Jordan?
So I get back to the factory, and there was a telex that said, I think it's Rex Staten got hurt and he couldn't make it. So my First Nations presence was in '78 at Galdorf, and I got second behind Mikkola, and that surprised everybody. I wanted a smooth linear power band.
Right.
And that's what my 470 Works Honda had. So they said, no, you got to ride the 500. So Eric and I, we go to out behind the hotel, and the night before he shoehorns in the 470 motor.
Okay.
And Eric said, dude, this is going to get me fired. And I said, it won't matter. It won't matter. And it might have got him fired if we didn't win, but it was hard to deny a win.
Those are just some of the great stories that Chuck's son had from last week on Vintage Motocross Radio. You can listen to all of our interviews at any time. They're all in order. You can listen to the Harry Clem interview, of course, Chuck's son. We've had Scott Burnworth, Steve Simons a few weeks ago. And this week coming up, for the first time, we have an international guest. And I'm really, really excited to announce that this week's guest will be Garrett Walsink. So this Sunday at 11 a.m. at Vintage Motocross Radio, the King of Carlsbad, Garrett Walsink, will be joining us at Vintage Motocross Radio. Finally, we've got some events coming up in the future, and I'm so happy to announce that American Retro Cross has got a race coming up at Glen Helen on June 20th. There's a link available in this video that you're watching. You can find out more about American Retro Cross, the race that's coming up, all the classes that'll be available. So I think we've all been shut in for quite some time now. If you get the opportunity, if you have the time, get down there to Glen Helen on June 20th for the Glen Helen race for American Retro Cross. June 27th and 28th, there is a ARMA National. It's at Bodner Ranch in Derry, Oregon. It is a national. I'm sure you probably have to pre-register. So you might want to go over to the ARMA website. That race is coming up, and that's actually only about 10 days away. So if you get a moment, go over to the ARMA website. You can sign up for that race in Derry, Oregon. Marty Smith commemorative stickers are still available from Rich Vasallo. You can email Rich at usa1899@aol.com. That is his PayPal address. Also, he does take Venmo. I know they're selling these things quite quickly. A lot of people are buying 2 sets. Some of them they're putting on their toolboxes, on their trucks, and the other set, they're making a nice display of putting it in a frame. I want to thank Rich Vasallo, of course, Rich Dombey and Walt Hackensmith for donating not only the stickers, but Walt, of course, with that great artwork that he has contributed to this, and they're going pretty quick. So contact Rich Vasallo for $20. You can get yourself a beautiful set of Marty Smith commemorative decals. The Vmxq&A shirts are still available. You can get them in long sleeve, short sleeve. They're all available in black and white in all popular sizes. You can go over to Metro Racing and order it right through our friends over there. I want to thank Don and Peg Miller for being sponsors of the show. We now have t-shirts available. Jordan has put together a little thing, not from Metro, but one of Jordan's contacts on his own. Here it is, a white t-shirt with the Vmxq&A logo on it. On the back, it's got on Facebook with my name on it. You can get them in a couple of different sizes, I'm sure, for just $22. There's a link available on the show, so you can get a hold of Jordan. For $22, you can get yourself a nice t-shirt and display it proudly. I hope when you do get that shirt, you take a picture, send it in. We'll make a little album showing people with their Vmxq&A t-shirt on. Get one soon. Thanks, Jordan, for putting that together for us. FastGuyStuff.com is still supplying us with stickers every week for people who send in bikes for the Moto Showcase. I want to thank Sean Gomes and everyone there. When you get a moment, go over to FastGuyStuff.com. They have stickers for all sorts of different things, all different periods throughout motocross. They have stickers for your rims, all kinds of great stuff, period correct stuff. Sean Gomes, thank you, and all your people there at FastGuyStuff.com for being a great product sponsor. There's still sponsorship opportunities available for Vintage Motocross Q&A. Much like Vinco is doing, Amsoil, Preston Petty Products, they're all seeing the results of the show, and the show is growing too. So if you want to get on board with this, you might want to do it rather quickly. The show has jumped tremendously in the past month. The month before, our high was about 45,000 people. This month, we're over 66,000 people in the last 30 days. We're up a real good percentage. And if you want to be a Vintage Motocross Q&A sponsor, get a hold of me, send me a message in the inbox. I'll get your proposal. We'll put something together for you. And I understand we do have a winner for the trivia contest tonight. This is Joe Abadi. Who am I speaking to?
John Nostra. How you doing, Joe?
John Nostra. Boy, I'll tell you, you've got to really have your thinking cap on to get this one, John. I'm going to read the question again, and I'm going to be waiting for your answer. I want to know whose gas tank that was on that bike. Why was it modified to look like that? For what race? And who was the guy that helped the rider of that bike modify it at that time?
Okay. Well, the rider, the gas tank had to be made special to be able to have enough gas to finish the race. I think it's St. Antonis. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
You are 100% correct. So you've told me the track. Now, whose bike was it?
Roger DeCoster.
You got that one. Now, I'll tell you what. You have won the DVD. But if you could tell me who the guy who helped him modify that tank, I would just about fall off my stool.
Lucian Tilkin.
Oh my, if I had a bell, I'd be ringing it right now. That is absolutely unbelievable. You are correct on all three answers, and we're going to get you this DVD right out to you. I'm going to put Susie back on the phone. She's going to get your address. I want to thank you so much for listening and really coming through for me in the last minute, because I didn't know what I was going to do if I had run out of show and I didn't have a winner.
Well, thank you, Joe. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you. Thanks for watching. Jordan? That wraps up another one for Vintage Motocross Q&A. I want to thank everybody for watching, Jordan for helping put everything together here, of course, Susie and Chelsea, and I've got Gino here, but I don't know if he's going to make it up here tonight. Gino, come on, boy. Can you make it tonight? Come on, Gino. You got it. Thanks for watching, everybody. And don't forget Vintage Motocross Radio on Sunday with our guest, Garrett Walsink. We'll see you then.